You know, right from the beginning, this is what I hear from Dad. Andy really knew what he wanted. He knew that he wanted that community. He wanted his town, Mayberry. Well, I don't have, detailed memories of being around the Andy Griffith Show, but I do remember, especially when they went outdoors, when they shot, outside in Culver City, or they shot here at Franklin. It was kind of a big deal, and I think it was a good opportunity for Mom to get out of the house. So for a lot of times, I would be towed along. Of course, when you're 4 or 5 years old, you really can't say, no, I don't want to go. Bob Sweeney, who directed me later on in The Baileys of Balboa, he was the nicest guy and got the greatest vibe. He was the one that directed most of the episodes for the first 5 years. And I'm sure he's in there. And that's Reggie, the prop man. I remember Mom and Dad talking about what the color they were gonna choose to paint the inside of the house, and even the color of the wardrobe. Because, when it was black and white, they didn't really care. And then they were hit with this whole Technicolor explosion, and it became a big tool, Well, how do you spiff up the sheriff? Well, you can't put him in a clown suit. The times, and this happens with a lot of shows, when they're mostly inside and they have a chance to go shoot outside, the crew is so happy to be outdoors. And it was such a break to actually spend a day where you're not in the soundstage all day, that everybody was always in a good mood. It's really interesting. I can't really pick them out. There was a time in the Andy Griffith Show, if you go back and see behind the scenes footage, the grips and the crew members all wore shirts and ties. I mean, they didn't look like grips. They looked like businessmen. It was the protocol. Mount Airy, Andy's hometown, he wanted to keep that community spirit and that kind of everybody pulling for each other. He wanted to keep that right front and center. He wasn't listening to the networks. In fact, the network couldn't even give him notes. Things were becoming so urbanized. And yet the Andy Griffith Show came out and became successful, and the New York executives just didn't know how to note the story. They didn't, it was so off the map from what the networks were trying to do, and yet it was successful. And boy, you gotta give Andy a lot of credit for that, because he's the one that laid it out there, and he believed in it. He got to put a good team of people around him, and boy, and it was all done because people believed in the show, and they think that the show had value, and it does. All you gotta do is watch one. Oh, look, there I am. Now, those masks, Dad got a bunch of horror masks. A friend of his had a special effects house that went bankrupt, and they had to have a fire sale. And when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, Dad, to help the guy out, he went down there and bought some of the stuff. And it was all cheesy stuff from the 50s. But Dad had a whole collection of monster masks and all sorts of gizmos from like Ed Wood movies and stuff. And, our house was big fun. Dad was always a great sport because, Dad, he parented like a parent, but there was a lot of kid inside of him. And he was always, if not dreaming, he was always speculating. Dad was a great guy, and boy, I miss him. And I'm lucky because my business includes a lot of cameras and a lot of film and tape, and I'm so lucky that I have Dad and Mom in a lot of footage, because it's great for me to go back and look at this stuff. I mean, I don't think for a second I get jaded and I don't feel some pangs of emotion when I see home movies like this. I also got to remember the time Mom is stomping her feet and screaming, like a banshee. Those are things I also got to bring to the table because that was part of the Howard family too. Because not every day is a happy, happy, happy day in the Howard family. This is where they shot The Neighborhood. That was fun to go and shoot, or to go and be outdoors, where they shot the streets of Mayberry. It was a blast. I always found it really exciting that, you know, show business streets aren't very long. Like a block is very short. And I could run down to the end of the block, and it was only like 3 houses, you know, back and forth. I like the compact nature of a back lot. Well, I'll tell you what, Ron and I give Dad the credit, you know, and Dad was with us nurturing us as actors and stuff, but Mom was really, you know, very powerful because, you know, she was right there for everybody too. She was the unsung hero, and, you know, she always had dinner ready. She may not have been the best cook in the world, and she grew up at a time when canned food was good, so we had a lot of canned vegetables in our house, which in retrospect was probably not the most nutritious thing in the world, but she did make us dinner, and she was there. And, you know, when Dad would go off and be a little, not go off, he would be a little aloof, you know, Mom could stomp her foot down and put order back in the house. Well, hey, if you just like that clip, hit the like button. There's gonna be plenty more.
If you want more videos about The Andy Griffith Show, be sure to hit subscribe and click that little bell icon so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Thanks for watching.
Shazam!